Roundtable. We're now going to focus on Climate Policy Radar. Climate Policy Radar is a nonprofit that describes itself as being on a mission to map and analyze the global climate law and policy landscape. We're lucky enough today to have with us the CEO and founder of Climate Policy Radar, Dr. Michal Nachmani. Michal, welcome.
Thank you so much. I hope everyone is caffeinated enough. And I'll be the person between this and the next coffee break.
Yeah, so it's all good. Michal, you were also just introduced. You're a visiting fellow at the Grantham Research Institute on Climate Change and the Environment at the London School of Economics. You've studied law, you studied finance, climate policy. Today you lead a not-for-profit climate AI startup. What is that exactly?
So we're on a mission to organize, analyze, and democratize access to knowledge on climate laws and policies. The ability to understand what is going on in this very, very messy black box of climate law and policy really hinders our progress. And the ability to then make better laws, hold policymakers to account, integrate policy risk into decision-making, including mobilizing private and public finance, really stops us from doing so. Because what we have, and anyone who's done research knows this, if you want to figure out anything about policies, you have to find the laws or the policies, you have to find the documents, you open them, and then you control-find a term. And that doesn't make any sense. So I got impatient working as an academic for a long time and trying to do this manually for a long time. And as impatient people go, in response to the urgency of the polycrises that we're experiencing, the climate crisis, the biodiversity crisis, the cost of living crisis, and many other crises that we're all experiencing at once, I decided to embark on a new adventure and harness the power of technology in order to advance global good. So I'll tell you more about it.
So just before we dive in really into how it works and what it is, just tell us a bit more about the process, how you personally were brought to creating this.
In 2009, on the sidelines of the Copenhagen COP, there was a group of parliamentarians who said, we want to make better laws, and we want to learn from each other. They were very climate-focused and nature-focused, and they said, but we have no idea what laws we even have on our own books. So they commissioned the London School of Economics to write a very small booklet called Climate Change Legislation in 16 Countries. The project continued as an annual project. I joined it. A year later, I was running it. We brought it to be an online resource of all 200 national governments, and it has, I think, about 300,000 users every year. In about 2 weeks, Climate Policy Radar is taking over that, so that'll be nice, and kind of bringing our technology to that. Endorsed by Chief UN Climate Christiana Figueres at the time, brought to parliamentarians globally. But it was still a library of documents. It was still a library of PDFs that you had to open and read and make sense of. And the ability to do that quickly and efficiently and to gain knowledge that is structured and that enables you to very quickly make whatever decision you want is that. So here I am, having worked on providing data to make decision-making for 25 years, more or less. White hairs to show that. In various in various circumstances, but 15 years on climate, and we really need to make decisions better quickly.
Right. So who actually needs to be using this, and who's using it already?
Sure. So, like I said, there's a few kind of policy processes. There are a few processes we want to influence. The first one is the policy-making process, because policy is the make or break of, I say climate, but when I say climate, I also talk about all the other challenges. Climate, oceans, nature, everything is very similar, and we'll talk about how we can support breaking those silos. So policy-making, and policy-making, of course, isn't only parliamentarians and civil servants, it's also everyone who supports them, from think tanks and consultancies, all the way down to primary academic research that then aims to answer the question, what works? So that's the first one. The second one, complementary, is holding policymakers to account. Why aren't you doing that? Look, there are great examples out there already of people doing that. There's stuff that works. Why are we reinventing the wheel? That's a second one. The third one is policy tracking and aggregation. The ability to identify gaps where there is missing policy, where there is policy that can be made better, and being able to do that at scale, being able to identify where you can learn from peers, and of course identifying where there are gaps that need to be financed. If we identify that there isn't enough policy making on grasslands restoration or on supporting blue carbon. We need to know that so we can say, hey, this is where money should be going, this is where attention should be going. And fourthly, when we think about financial decision making, including investment, lending, and insurance, the ability right now, or the practice right now, takes policy risk very little into account. Everyone talks about policy risk, no one is actually measuring it. Because if we think about, I don't know, small island states, somebody wants to build a hotel, somebody wants to finance that. The only information that we have now is that there's a risk of a hurricane. Great. But there are policy measures that can reduce or increase that risk. Not taking those into account doesn't enable us to map and analyze what is the exact policy risk that goes with that. And I will add one more risk, which is litigation risk. Climate litigation is a growing giant that we should all pay very close attention to. Strategic climate litigation starts with a Peruvian farmer suing German RWE, the German utility, for their part in climate change that led to the flooding of his valley. And RWE all of a sudden having to take note of this Peruvian farmer. Climate litigation looks like a bunch of Dutch citizens, who are taking their government all the way to the Supreme Court and winning over insufficient climate action. Climate litigation is suing companies over greenwashing, and the best climate litigation is climate litigation that doesn't happen because somebody makes the policy change or the behavior change just a second before they're sued. So litigation change is also something that we really need to take into account. Being able to map that very quickly, identify patterns, identify where these things can happen, that's where we are. So those are a very exhaustive or non-exhaustive list. And of course, like journalism, right? You want to write a paper, you want to write a piece, and you want to know who's doing what. That's where we start.
Well, I was going to say, so let's zoom in more closely now to Climate Policy Radar. How does it work? How is it different from a standard search engine like a Google?
Cool. So the best questions are the one that you had a slide for, right? All right. So we're not doing a dynamic presentation, but I invite you all later, not now, now you have to look at the screen, to our free, online, updated Climate Policy Radar app. Into this, and this is like the ground level. This is what we started doing, and I'll tell you about our plans in a minute. We brought into here 3,500 laws and policies that are climate relevant from every single national government in the world. And here's what, oh wait, can we go back one slide? So, in honor of the first panel of today, what we've done is we've taken all of those, made them machine readable, inserted them into here, so you can look for anything that you want here. So here I've chosen to look for land rights of indigenous peoples. So if we then now go to this, what we can see here, and there's a long list under there, with that, this is a screenshot of the first two results. Here is how indigenous peoples' land rights are represented in national laws and policies. Now, you can see that the Suriname National Red Plus strategy and the framework of the Guyana Green State Development may not be the immediate places where you would go to look for things like that. You need to know that this is where you would go for. So if I click on the next slide, please, and I went to the Guyana one, I can get to the exact paragraph where the text is represented. So we've done two things. One, we've made the research process much quicker. There you go, here it is. And the second, we've opened it up. You are no longer searching in 10 documents, you are now searching in 3,500 documents at the same time. You may have not thought about looking at Guyana or at Bangladesh or at Vanuatu. Now you can. So for anyone working on this may not be good policy. I don't know. It's not my job right now to say is this a good policy. There are other organizations, and our job is to support them from the bottom and to say, here's the data that you need in order to decide if this is good policy. And you'll do that, by the way, by plugging it into other data sets. Here's how, here's interventions in different flavors. Here's some real-world impacts. Can we start mapping that when you do this, this starts happening. When you do that, this starts happening. And until now, we've taken a very anecdotal and siloed approach to this, and we're trying to start to break that down. I think the last slide just gives you the link, so if you want to take a screenshot of that and try it on. Of course, you can put anything into there. You could put fiduciary rights, or grasslands restoration, or food system overall, or whatever it is. If it's in the text, And of course, if you put EVs, you will also get results for electric vehicles and electric cars and electric automobiles. This is what's called a semantic search, enabled by recent developments in the last few years of natural language processing, which is the AI kind of branch that underpins our work.
And it's fascinating. I was playing around with this a little bit yesterday, and it is, to your point, very efficient, and it gets you where you need to go. I guess the next question is so where does it go from here? What are you planning for the future?
Great. So quite a lot. I was talking over lunch with Inga, and we said that if it's not ambitious, it's not worth doing, right? So this is ambitious. We need to break silos, which means climate and biodiversity and nature are all related. We need to bring in all of the laws and the policies and the strategies and the action plans and UNFCCC documents and the UN Convention on Biodiversity, on desertification, all of those into the same place and allow them the same treatment. Secondly, we need to throw a little more AI weaponry at that. What does that mean? Now you can search for something, but what we're planning is we're building what's called a knowledge graph. You know when you Google something and it gives you images and videos and a little picture? Each one of them is what's called structured data. You know that this is an image, you know that this is a table, you know that this is a video. So we will do the same thing, but you will know that this is a policy instrument, you will know that this is about these extreme weather events, you will know that this is in these geographies, you will know that this is about these technologies. So we start, imagine this like colorful highlighting where you highlight different pieces, and then you bucket them together. So when you say, can you show me subsidies for technology X in geography Y, it will say, okay, I can now fish all of those bits together and aggregate them for you. We are partnered with, as a research partnership with OpenAI, who put out ChatGPT and GPT-4. The ability now to summarize text very quickly and say, can you summarize these? Can you compare these for me? Is one of our kind of exciting developments. Of course, we need to be very careful about that, and we'll talk maybe a little bit about the dangers in a minute.
Just quickly, we're here in Monaco Ocean Week, of course. Just talk a bit more about the relevance to oceans in regard to what you're trying to do.
Sure. So, I mean, oceans is a huge part of climate. Climate is a huge part of oceans. They do that. Yet the documents that govern the rules of how states relate to corporations, to citizens, to each other, often are siloed in very different places. So you have the ocean people reading the ocean documents and talking to the ocean people. You've got the climate people talking to the climate people, reading climate documents. You've got the biodiversity people talking to the biodiversity people. We're not reading the same things. We're not speaking the same language. Sometimes you're not aware of what's going on in your own country. Sometimes Ministry of Energy doesn't know what's happening in the Ministry of Transportation and the Ministry of Water. The ability to de-silo these things and bring them together is critical. And I think the ocean agenda, and we heard a few days ago, that is the least funded SDG. Now that doesn't make any sense because climate is, pretty highly funded, I think, among the SDGs, and oceans is a huge part of climate. Some of the people writing grants are just, talking about it in the wrong way potentially, right? So we're thinking about how to bring those together. Documents are documents. Health is next, poverty is next, gender is next, and they're all the same thing.
Let's talk about the company more specifically. What's your business model? This is a not-for-profit, so talk us through what that means and where it's going.
Sure. So we were founded in London in 2021. We're a team of 13 now. We are fully grant-funded at the moment. Fully grant-funded mean that we are able and willing to put our stuff out here for free. We're starting, and everything that you've seen will remain free forever for a number of reasons. And in parallel, we will start developing some revenue models that will allow us to remain sustainable. That means usually packaging some analytical products and then giving them to free to those who deserve to get them for free and selling them to those who can pay. So we'll Robin Hood away from the big banks into the small NGOs.
I guess that's what I was going to say. I mean, from a business perspective, why make it free? Just talk a bit more about that. I mean, you're offering this information out there when there could be a lot of money to be made, but it seems like that's going to be happening down the line then.
Sure. The money will be made, by the way, will be funneled back into the company so we could do more of this, so we can continue to give it to the world for free. Why for free, and why is this so important? So our open data and open source code allows three things. First of all, it's a basic justice principle. The people who need this data the most are usually the ones least able to pay for it. And they're the ones who are suffering the most and the ones who had the least impact on climate change, biodiversity loss, and ocean loss. And they're the ones who we need to empower. So if this is like pro bono lawyers supporting coastal communities who want to know what are the laws or want to support better engagement, this is one of the critical things that we can give them. The second thing is you put out something for free, it spurs innovation. There's enough problems for everyone. I'm a radical collaborator in that sense. Nobody's my competitor. You want to solve the problem? No problem. I'll find another problem to solve. Put out innovations, put out open source data. Somebody will build something that someone needs on it. And that's what we need. We don't have time to wait and do proprietary and so on. And you give to the universe gives back. We raised £2.5 million to date, and we're hoping to raise much more soon so we can continue building this. And the third thing, and this is really important for, we talk about AI, you put out open data and transparency, and you do it in transparency, then you mitigate the risks of the bias, the huge bias that AI can cause. Because there's so much danger in AI, and we want to do it right. We want to be very responsible. We want to be transparent. We want people to tell us, you're doing it wrong, so we can fix it, so we can do it better.
Tell us a bit more about that. What's a concrete example of how you can avoid bias?
So let's think about, my worst nightmare is that we radically succeed and somebody uses our data to make decisions based on wrong data. What can that look like? We are analyzing text, right? We're analyzing policy. Somebody will say eventually, this is a good policy, this is a bad policy, put it in some kind of index, potentially assign prices to things or make decisions on, I'll finance you because you have it, I won't finance you because you don't have it. For example, some elements of a climate law or policy, I don't know, you have gender equality, you don't have gender equality. But different countries and different jurisdictions and different cultures use different language to describe similar things. So if I talk about gender and you talk about women, and we didn't account for both, then we have a problem, because it means that I'm not noticing that you are doing that. Especially that a lot of the language models that we are using were trained on English language Global North documents. We may not be in a position to identify correctly how some of these concepts are represented, especially in the Global South and in vulnerable communities, which means that we have a risk of exacerbating this inequality. For us, A, being transparent, and B, being an active call for dialogue with those who we can learn from and incorporate and improve those models is better. So I'm really, really pleased about being in this morning's panel and already have some schemes for collaboration on how do we make sure that Indigenous language is present and represented in the models. We can't fix everything. Like, we're not building, first level AI models, we're using others, but we're fine tuning them, and we want to make sure that we do it as best we can and be transparent on where we can, so people can be aware of that and mitigate the risks.
And it really is so fascinating when we talk about AI. It sounds so exciting, so positive, but obviously we also hear a lot of negative things about AI as well. Just ChatGPT, for example, like you mentioned a moment ago. But I guess the question is which way is it going? What are you doing to ensure that your technology is used for good?
So we are in this, especially in the last couple of months, where everyone all of a sudden is talking about AI and ChatGPT and all of these things, where we really feel at a crossroads of utopia versus dystopia. And to me, this is about how do we use AI. AI makes decisions quickly. AI analyzes and compares a lot of data quickly. AI cuts a lot of costs and opens up the ability to do things like we couldn't. 2 days ago, we were sat here. There was a panel about AI and data in the oceans, the ability to map oceans, to map pockets of plastic pollution, to find information that we couldn't before. These are things that AI enables us to do, and those are great. And we should harness that. And to me, open data and putting out data sets in the open as much as we can, and models out in the open as much as we can, because that is the remedy, or the risk mitigation, because sunlight is the best disinfectant. What AI cannot do is be an ethical North Star. Because if you look at your Google Maps today and you say, get me to this point, it will ask you, do you want to get there the fastest way, the shortest way, the way that saves you the most fuel, the cheapest way? These are ethical choices. These are things that ask, what do you want to maximize? So do you want to maximize GDP? Do you want to minimize inequality? Do you want to maximize or to optimize how this addresses these human rights, those human rights? These are ethical choices that no machines can do. You can tell the machine, optimize that. But this is where humans need to make sure that they have the control. This is one of the greater risks. I don't have answers for all of these big questions. All I can do is put out the flags for where we need to look out for and work as transparently as we can so everyone can make their own decisions.
So, Michal, for you, you don't see a world ever where AI will be writing our laws. That's not a reality.
The day that ChatGPT came out, I wrote this Twitter thread that went a bit viral on where we tried exactly that. I was like, ooh, can you compare this and that? Can you write me a treaty on non-proliferation of fossil fuels? And it did. And it did a good job. So writing a law is a synthesis of practice from elsewhere, has to be governed by ethics. So we can shorten the process of synthesizing policy and not reinventing the wheel. Some of you in the audience seem old enough or not young enough to remember that Microsoft had this thing, had a little clippy thing at the bottom of its Word, and it says, I see that you're writing a letter, how can I help? And it said, and it kind of auto-completed sentences. So I see that you're writing a policy. Have you considered, talking about gender equality? Have you thought about your enforceability mechanisms? Have you thought about inviting workers' unions to the table? These are some of the things. I mean, if you think about your Amazon shopping cart, users that bought this also bought that. So users that talk about oceans also talk about biodiversity. Think about it like that. These are some of the possibilities that we can surface. Somebody will still have to make the decision of what they want and how they want to implement it, given local differences, idiosyncrasies, cultural differences, and so on.
We're almost out of time. Just if you were to give a final message to everyone about not just AI, but about your business in general, what would that be?
I'll go back to radical collaboration. And I think all of us here are operating more or less in the same direction. With our nuance and flavors, and all we need to do is continue talking to each other, giving each other as much as we can. Give. Stuff will come back. I really don't see another way to do it. I really don't see another way that we can sleep well at night without doing it. And I hope that you all join me in this.
Michal, thank you so much. If you agree, we're going to have a quick coffee break now, but I'm sure Michal is ready to answer all of your questions. Please feel free to come on up and talk to her. We're going to take another quick break. We'll be back in a half an hour, 30 minutes, with our final panel for the day. This will be on